like I said, I've got something real special today. We're moving into upgrades. We've covered everything we were doing to the truck up till now. Now we're going to cover what we're doing moving on. Now, this is something that I kind of hinted at a couple times in the last couple videos, but I'm stoked about it. One thing about these 5 and 6 speed RFE transmissions is they don't launch. They don't launch for crap. So the best thing to do, you know, build the motor and everything. You want to make more power, of course, but torque converter, stall torque converter, stalled at the correct stall. So anyways, I'm gonna take y'all on a little field trip to my shop and show you what I've got sitting in the shed next to it. Something special. All right, here we go. Now, what we have here is a 545 RFE transmission. Now, this transmission is the predecessor to the 65 RFE transmission. Now, they are both basically the same transmission. The key difference being the torque converter was updated for the 65, and the programming from the PCM to the transmission was different. So the transmission itself is the same. And if you have the white connector on the solenoid pack, then it is the same as the 65. They updated them. The white connector is a universal and it fits on all RFE transmissions. So your computer is what does the work. The PCM is integrated with the TCM on all models with a 545 RFE. Now, before this, there was a 45 RFE. That transmission was basically the same thing. They just used one less gear. You didn't have that 5th gear. These transmissions utilize a 2nd prime gear, so the shifting goes 1, 2, then 3, 4, and then on the 545 you have 5. So it's 5 gears. On the 45 you have 4 gears, so you don't have your 5th. On both the 45 and the 545 you have 2nd prime. Now that gear is slightly above 2nd gear. Now that gear is used for kickdowns and is not normally in the shift sequence 1 through 5. So technically a 545 RFE transmission is a 6-speed, and a 45 RFE transmission is a 5-speed. But you don't use that 2nd prime, so really it is a 4-speed on the 45 and a 5-speed on the 545. On the 65 RFE transmission, it is still a 5-speed transmission because it is the same as a 545 transmission if you compare it to the body and the guts of this transmission. Torque converters were different, and the programming and the use of auto stick was different, but they're the same transmission. Now the difference is they call 2nd prime 3rd on the 65 RFE transmission. So they go 1, 2, then 2nd prime is now 3, then you have 4, 5, 6 instead of 3, 4, 5. So they just count it in that gears. They still do not work in a sequential shifting. That's that 3rd gear, which was 2nd prime, is still skipped over. So it's the same shifting pattern. Now for the 65, if you have custom tuning, you can get what some people call a true 6 tune. Now I think that's a good name for it, so I'm going to use that name. That allows you to use the 2nd prime, which is a close gear ratio to 2nd, and it, instead of going, you know, wrap, bogging into 3rd, as all of these did, on a 6-speed with the true 6 tune, you would go wrap, and then just, it would be less of a downshift, or should I say less of a RPM drop into the next gear, because you would use that gear as a little bump, and it kind of just bumps you up into 3rd, and it'll almost be like it hangs RPM. It'll, you know, rop, shift, rop, shift, rop. It's hard to explain, and I'm just rambling here, but if you understand, you know what I mean. This transmission doesn't do that. Now, can you tune it to do that with the white connector? You would think you could. Every tuner I've talked to says, no, I can't do that. Well, maybe there's a reason behind that. Maybe it's not that they can't. Maybe it's they shouldn't. I don't know. But as of right now, this is the transmission that we have. It's a 545 RFE transmission. The torque converter, moving to that, so we can see right on it, it says hot, bad. I wrote that there because this whole time, since I did the cam and built the engine fully, put it in, I think it took a week, took out, it was getting hot, it was getting very hot, and it took out fourth gear. Now fourth gear shares a clutch with second prime. Second prime is that kickdown gear. Now it got hot a lot, but especially in second prime. It likes to kick down into second prime whenever you're cruising down the road and you slow down and make a turn. And you make the turn, going 20 to 30 or so, and then you get back in it. Well, it bumps down into second prime instead of second. Well, that gear's just a little bit too tall. Or I don't really know if I should say tall. It's just too high of a gear in the gear selections for it to really transfer any meaningful torque to the wheels, because you're too low in the RPM in that gear. Especially when you have 35s and a huge full drive mega cab with a Dana 60 and a Dana 80 and a toolbox full of stuff. It just torched it. So the torque converter got hot, took out that clutch that shared with fourth and second prime. Well, I didn't lose second prime for some weird reason, but I wouldn't have noticed because I started downshifting into second manually, which is something you should always do if you are going to make that corner and give it any kind of meaningful throttle. You should downshift into second gear manually. If I had it my way, we would take that second prime and do away with it. Really, I would love to go to another transmission besides this transmission, but I'm not going to get into that right now. There's other RFE options that I think would work with some ingenuity. But anyhow, this is what we have. We have 545 RFE. This is the transmission that came out of the truck. Now, during this time, I have been changing out the torque converter, and I've changed out the engine with I just got a junkyard unit and completely rebuilt it. That way I could just swappity-swap. And I have another one right here, so if I have a problem with the one in it, I don't have to pull it out and have downtime. I can keep driving it if it will drive, and so on. So this whole time I haven't had fourth gear, and this transmission is the one with fourth gear out of it, and the torque converter got too hot, and that's what happened. It torched the clutches. Anything over really 210 degrees, you need to start doing something about it. On my vehicle, I don't know if y'all's will have this, but I have tow haul and overdrive off. Tow haul does not let you get into fifth, and it will lock the torque converter in fourth. It also changes the shifting and lets it rev a little more before shifts and stuff to give you a little bit more of your power before you shift. Just keeps it from bogging. Overdrive off gives you no fourth, no fifth. So you have 1 through 3rd. Well, I didn't have fourth, and it would bang around and act crazy and hunt for gears if it tried to go into fourth and throw check engine codes and go into limp in, and we just can't have that. I had to drive it. It's my only vehicle. Well, so what I did was I put it in overdrive off, and it would go 1 through 3rd. It would really be slow to shift out of the gears, but it worked great. Torque converter would lock into 3rd. Now, I say all that to say this. If you're having a transmission, one of these, in a 3rd gen, with the overdrive off selection available to you, if your transmission gets hot, honestly, I do it if it gets over 200 degrees. But if it gets hot and you're going 35 miles an hour or over, you can take your selector on the side of your shifter and hit it until it says overdrive off on the gauge display. When it does that, it will be in 3rd gear going 35, and it will lock the torque converter if you're going over 35, in my case. Now, different tunes and different wheel sizes may be different, but you need to get it to lock the torque converter. Once it does that, in 3rd gear with overdrive off, it will cool off your transmission. So if you're going to a slow speed and it's not high enough in overdrive and locking the torque converter and it's not cooling off, but you want it to cool off, you can force cool it by putting it overdrive off. It will limit you to 3rd gear, and if you're going over a preset speed, which for me is 35, it will lock the torque converter, still flowing fluid through your cooler, and then cool off your transmission. And that will save you a big price tag on having to do what I did. Now, I was going to do this anyway, but it got moved up in the schedule, let's put it that way. So I say all that to give you all good in-depth information. I hope I haven't rambled on too much, but there you go. That's all the info I have on them. If you guys have any more information that you would like to know, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll try to get back to you. I'll try to answer. I'm here to try to educate, because this has been an educational process for me, to say the least. So I'm trying to put it out there where it's not already out there. Moving on to what we did. Okay, this is the exciting thing. I bought an Edge Racing torque converter 2800 stall, because if you watch the Party Wagon performance video, that's where it starts to hit real hard on the RPM where my power's at. So I bought a 2800 stall. Now my theory here is that instead of a 3000, which is where it really hits hard, I got a 2800 for a lot of reasons. One of them is drivability. The other one is because I wanted it to hit the torque converter and take off. Then I have 200 RPM to where I can kind of get some inertia going. It's a big girl. I don't want to smack it all at once, and I sure as heck don't want to spin, because that's not going to make us go anywhere. So I hit 2800 RPM. It runs up 200 RPM, giving just a little momentum going, and then it hits the rest of the power at 3000 and starts running up on the torque. We run out all the way. I'm shifting at 6000 right now. Might do some adjustments to that once we see what it does. Got to get a tune from a tuner. It's doing some weird things right now, but I love it. It's been raining constantly, so I really don't know what it'll do, but I love it. I really do. It's a different animal, guys. Do not skip the torque converter. Now, I didn't build the transmission that I put in it. Was a junker transmission. I went through it head to toe. Clutches look amazing. I put in a Transgo Shift kit, not the reprogramming kit, the Shift kit. So the difference is it doesn't come with a little resistor or whatever it is to reprogram it. If you have a tune of any kind that does transmission tuning with it, do not buy the reprogramming kit, because it serves the same purpose. And in all honesty, I highly recommend a tune over the reprogramming kit from Transgo. Get the hardware kit. Now, I think it's like SK-45 RFE. It will work on all of the transmissions, 45 RFE to 65 RFE. And I also believe it will work on the 66 RFE, which is a transmission I would love to have. And I'm pretty sure it works on 68 for diesels, but that just gives you an overview of that. So Transgo Shift Kit, put it in. It comes with stuff to beef up the pump, the transmission pump. It comes with stuff to beef up the valve body. It comes with a snap ring, which I've never seen them have a problem, but apparently they did. But a snap ring that goes deep in the transmission. If you have never done transmission work, I do not recommend doing that yourself. And I'm just going to tell you that right now. So if you get into it and it's more than you can handle, then so have a buddy or something. I'm sure there's some videos out there. There's other YouTubers who've got videos on it. But just know that that's not a low-level thing. If you're just, you know, a beginner and you're not super mechanically inclined, then I recommend getting some help with that. Torque converter, that guy just pops on there. You got to spin it and pop it on. And but as you can tell, this one's junk. So we got another transmission in there. It is a 545 RFE, and I put a shift kit in it and a Edge Racing torque converter. So that's all the details, and guess what? Here we go. Let's get on the road, and I'll show you guys what it does now, and we can compare it to what it did before. Alright, so I got the 2800 stall. Pay attention to the RPMs, and we'll compare it to the last video where it kind of jumps to 2000 and runs on in. Here it jumps up more, and watch what it does. And ignore my low tire. Alright, here we go. Much better. Much better. It just gets up and goes. Now, if you noticed, I need to get this tuned out of it or see what's going on, but it has. I've got my first revision for my tuner on the torque converter with the tune, but I think we still need to dial in a few things. I've only got one revision, so it kind of stands to reason you want to get a few done. But you notice how it jumped up, and then it was like, and then it almost like it fell off in its face, and then it went again. So it was like, and then started going. and I don't know why it did that. It's very strange. It's like it hits the torque converter and bounces off, and then hits it again and starts going. It lunges, and then lunges again and keeps going. It lunges and then it lunges and goes. So it's really weird. I want it to just wrap and go. That's what I want it to do. I'm not sure why it's doing what it's doing. Maybe I'm getting something going on. I'm not sure right now. But yeah, it's a lot better. I'm gonna do some data logging here in just a minute. I gotta find a good dry spot like that to launch on, and a good stretch of road out here in the middle of Mexico, Arkansas, so we can get a decent amount of speed going. But yeah, it's a lot better. It's a lot better. I mean, this old girl gets out of the hole now. It leaves now. I mean, there's no waiting on it. It just goes. The only thing that's holding it back now is weight, and you know, maybe making more power somehow, which we might have something in store for that here after a while. But as of right now, torque converter, amazing. I love it. It is great, fantastic. I mean, do not skip the torque converter. I'm telling you right now. Huge shout out to Andre at Edge Racing. He's the one who owns Edge Racing converters. I called Edge. I got a hold of Andre. I talked to him personally. We went over the truck. We went over the specs. We went over everything. He's going to want to know your cam specs, everything. Shoot him straight. Tell him everything honestly, every question he asks you, and then give him an honest answer. And then he will build you a torque converter to your specifications. If you don't already know what stall you want, he can help you make a recommendation based on, you know, stuff. I recommend what you do is you take off from a stop and see where it hits power, where it really starts hitting power. For me, it was 3,000 RPM. It comes up on a little plateau of power at 424, and then it hits again and hits hard on that second peak at 3,000, and that's when it just rocket ship. So we went with 28, get a little 200 RPM rolling before it hits the cam, and then off to the races. So speaking of off to the races, this Saturday, 2 days from today, as long as the weather's good and there's no rain and everything works out, I should be going to Tulsa Raceway. That's a quarter-mile dragway. Win, lose, or draw, we're going. Don't know who I'm gonna be racing. I had a bunch of races lined up, and it's Halloween, so they're not going. But it's gonna be me against the world, and we'll see what this old girl will do. And you know what? I'm not gonna say what it'll do, but I know it's gonna be impressive for what it is. Because I mean, no one's gonna expect a 5.7 liter Hemi 4-wheel drive mega cab to move like this thing's gonna move. Now, are we done? No matter what speed it goes? No, we're not done. We are not done with this truck. There's no way we're done with this truck. But going to the races, guys, first time. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it. From what I'm understanding, even without the cam and even without the torque converter, should have been able to set a record for this platform. Now we're going to set the bar high for a 5.7 mega cab, naturally aspirated. Now I don't know if there's anyone else doing anything, but I know for at least 5.7 mega cab naturally aspirated, we're going to be setting a record for quarter-mile time. And I'm really hoping that we can get it into 16, or if I can get into the 15s, I'd be happy. I'm being a little conservative with that. I think we can do that, but we'll see. As long as all goes well. I know that little jumpy start is not really optimal, but once we get the tune dialed in, we may go for a second visit. I don't know how long the track's open. I know this is the last midnight drags, so last chance to go and have fun with everybody else. So here we go. I'm looking forward to you guys. But anyhow, don't skip the torque converter. Moral of this story, do not skip the torque converter. I don't care what cam you got, don't skip the torque converter if you're trying to do digs. And that digs, I mean launching from a stop, in case anybody didn't know. Alright, anyhow, thank you all for watching Building Motorsport. Catch you on the next one.